With global climate change, pests, and eco-waste posing serious problems for farmers around the world, a young Lebanese lady is changing the game with her farm. Thanks to her use of special organic techniques, hard work, and determination, she and her farm have made headlines around the world. Keep watching this video, as I'll be telling you all you need to know about this Lebanese farm, regenerating soil, and promoting food security. About the Turba farm. The location is the Valley of Bekaa, Lebanon. The time is around 11 a.m., and Erica Akari, the founder of the Turba farm, heads for the shade to escape the stifling 36 degrees Celsius heat. And at 6 in the morning, she begins her day by irrigating the 6,000 square meters of primarily vegetable crops. She then checks every plant for disease, then transplants new seedlings for the following season. Turba, which means soil, is a suitable name for the farm, as it promotes regenerative organic practices. The 28-year-old Akari told Al Jazeera, and I quote, "It scares me that 80% of our topsoil is dead worldwide. I don't know how it doesn't scare other people." Thankfully, with the use of more organic techniques, she has managed to regenerate Turba's soil, and her farm produce has become well sought after in and outside her community. When was the Turba farm established? Akari, who is originally from Tripoli in northern Lebanon, co-founded Turba 2 years ago with Jahanna Kiki. The two won the $25,000 Rockefeller Foundation Food System Vision Prize for their joint design of a farming system, and they decided to use the prize money to start their own farm. However, Akari now tends to the entire farm by herself, mainly producing tomatoes, eggplant, and squash. Farming techniques of Turba. Turba isn't a conventional farm. Instead, it adheres to agroecology principles that are cheaper and eco-friendly. The farm is therefore shielded from the downward shifting market, while other farmers around the world struggle with rising fertilizer prices and shortages as a result of sanctions imposed on top fertilizer producer Russia due to its invasion of Ukraine. Her farm serves as a glimmer of hope at a time when warnings of food shortages reverberate throughout the world. According to Hassan Mokhlab, who is the manager for the International Center for Agricultural Research in Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine, increased fertilizer and pesticide use pollutes the soil rather than increasing agricultural yields. Mokhlab also states that excessive fertilizer use leads to an accumulation of nitrates in the soil, which pollutes it and runs off into the rivers, which in turn pollutes the water as well, creating a more balanced ecosystem. Turba strives to mimic nature as much as possible as a regenerative farm, and this is why artificial fertilizers and insecticides, which are costly and sometimes counterproductive, are not necessary for Akari. Turba uses crops that are more densely planted, as opposed to conventional farming, which typically uses monocropping, where crops may be planted in a field in rows barely wide enough for tractors to pass. Akari says, and I quote, "You wouldn't visit a forest and only see farms, would you? Insects that are more balanced in their ecosystems will naturally eliminate one another without the need for spraying." This is not to say that pests do not invade her farm every now and then, but the key, according to Akari, is to identify them as soon as possible and then take action with natural sprays derived from organic items such as garlic, pepper, baking soda, or whey. The problem of pollution and waste. The regulation of waste and pollution in Lebanon is less strict than it is in other developed parts of the world. Even from the highlands, untreated sewage may be seen flowing towards the Mediterranean Sea. Additionally, it enters the rivers, used by some farmers for irrigation. Akari stated while referring to the river close to her farm in Zal, "For sure, conventional farmers don't care about this, and some of them water straight from the Litani River." She said, and I quote, "You can tell it's all trash if you smell it or look at the Litani." When Akari leased the site 2 years ago, a water test was conducted, and the sample, taken from a well 80 meters deep, proved the water was seriously polluted. Because of the chemical fertilizers that most farms utilize in their runoff, Akari anticipated that the water would have a high nitrate content. She was stunned, however, that such a high level could be detected in a sample. Sounding extremely irritated, she said the test results also found a bacteria from human waste that isn't supposed to be there. This is why regenerative farming is so crucial, because it revives the soil, and the more alive the soil, the cleaner the water will be, and vice versa. Turba's healthier soil. Turba's soil is now healthier thanks to natural pest control techniques and the amount of compost Akari uses. She also practices crop rotation according to the seasons, and growing winter cover crops like oats and vetch help to prevent erosion when it rains. This all contributes to the soil structure and nutrients in Turba. Akari also stated that most farmers think that land degradation means that the land will become a desert, but that is not the case. What it means to be a young female farmer in Lebanon, a young and ambitious lady farming virtually alone in the Bekaa Valley, initially astonished fellow farmers, according to Akari. She stated that local farmers thought her processes were wrong and that they asked her to do things their way, but now they just appear amazed that her agricultural practices are so successful, enabling Turba to supply weekly vegetable boxes and sell at 3 food markets in Beirut City and the surrounding area. When someone is used to doing something a certain way, there is still a barrier when I try to explain how farming could be done. Teaching them a new way is really difficult, Akari remarked, but with a healthy attitude and desire, transformation will come gradually. That is what Akari believes. What you need to know about agriculture in Lebanon. After the tertiary and industrial sectors, agriculture is the 3rd most productive industry in Lebanon. It provides 5% of the nation's GDP and 8% of the country's labor force. The sector relies on foreign labor for productivity and employs a sizable portion of Syrian labor. Cereals, fruits, vegetables, tobacco, olives, grapes, sheep, and goats are the principal farm produce in Lebanon. Although there are few mineral resources in the country, they are only used for household purposes. Nonetheless, both European and tropical crops can be grown in Lebanon, which has a variety of agricultural terrain, from the central plateau of the Bekaa Valley to the small valleys that descend to the sea. In the south, tobacco and figs are grown, while citrus fruits and bananas are grown along the coast. Hashish and avocados are also commonly grown in the country. Lebanon's agricultural history, with the earliest trade taking place in the eastern Mediterranean. Agriculture in Lebanon stretches back to Phoenician times. The region's early inhabitants were known for winemaking, which has been practiced in the country for more than 5,000 years. The Phoenicians maintained vines, produced wine, and exported a sizable quantity to nearby nations like Egypt, Greece, and Assyria. But despite the fact that trade was booming at the time, the majority of the land was not arable. Therefore, trade and commerce were the main sources of wealth, not agriculture. However, they did farm sheep and sell both the animals and their wool to foreign countries. The Lebanese harbors of Tyre and Tripoli were busy with the transportation of industrial and agricultural goods when the country was under Arab sovereignty in the Middle Ages, during which time the country experienced an economic boom. Products from Lebanon were in high demand throughout the Mediterranean basin, and not just in Arab nations. The start of Ottoman rule and the hefty taxes levied on Lebanese production later stifled this period of economic expansion. Lebanon's second agricultural boom. Lebanon had re-established its previous agricultural boom in the early part of the 20th century, when almost a quarter of its land had been arable. The government created plans to irrigate an additional 60,000 hectares during this time, and by 1984, studies on 6 significant irrigation projects were underway. These projects were all intended to be implemented as part of the 1982 to 1991 reconstruction plan. However, the Israeli invasion brought about a steady diversion of water from rivers, mostly in the south, and according to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, even during the period of relative peace between 1978 and 1981, about 1,100 hectares of tobacco were destroyed, 300 hectares of agricultural land were abandoned due to landmines, with 51,000 olive trees and 70,000 fruit trees also destroyed. With the wealthy period it had experienced by the mid-1980s, Lebanon had emerged as one of the most significant narcotics trafficking hubs in the world, especially in the Bekaa Valley. Prior to 1975, the majority of this trade was transported through air from little strips of land in the Bekaa Valley. However, the drug crop was later exported by sea once the valley was under Syrian control. So guys, what do you think about the Turba Farms techniques? And how do you think it can be used in your local farming communities? Let us have your thoughts in the comment section. Don't forget to like and share this video, and hit the subscribe and notification buttons to keep getting more educative videos like this. Thanks for watching.